They have to have royal blood, those little ones. And
Meghan would be nothing if she hadn't married a prince and been looked.
She was apparently screaming to the producers, very, very annoyed.
So picture this. It's just another morning TV show, right? Bright lights, polished hosts, the usual small talk about celebrities and royals, nothing out of the ordinary. But then Angela Levin sits down, and within minutes, the entire room goes dead silent. What she said on live television that day didn't just make headlines. It started a firestorm that Harry and Meghan still can't put out. We're not talking about fashion choices or awkward family dinners here. This goes way deeper. This touches on something they've kept buried for years. Something about their kids, about tradition, about...
The world gasped when photos emerged of Prince Harry and his daughter, Lilibet, enjoying a 4th of July parade and
questions that nobody was supposed to ask out loud. And here's the wildest part. Harry's reaction showed us everything. The way he spiraled, the way Meghan vanished into thin air, the way the whole world watched them unravel in real time. This isn't gossip anymore. This is a full-blown media storm, and it's not slowing down. Before I show you what she said, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because this story gets crazier every single day. Drop a like if you're ready to see what Harry and Meghan have been hiding. Now let's get into it. What was supposed to be your typical morning show segment turned into something nobody saw coming.
So here's the situation. Prince Harry is fuming, not just irritated, not just frustrated, full-on furious. And this time,
Angela Levin walked onto that set like she always does. Confident, sharp, ready to talk royals. But this time was different. Now, if you don't know Angela Levin, here's what you need to understand. She's not one of those royal commentators who plays nice and keeps things polite. She's built her reputation on saying what others won't, on asking the uncomfortable questions that make people squirm. She's the one who calls things out when everyone else is staying silent, who points out the inconsistencies when the rest of the media is too careful to touch them. And that morning, she wasn't holding back. She sat down.
Angela Levin shut down by Nina Miskow for spreading lies about Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. Viewers cheer.
Looked straight into the camera and started talking about Prince Harry. But she wasn't discussing his latest charity appearance or what he wore to some event. No, she went somewhere way more uncomfortable. She started bringing up things that Harry and Meghan have kept under wraps for years. Things about their kids, things about royal tradition, things that made the studio go completely quiet. Listen, millions of people were watching this live. Morning coffee in hand, getting ready for work, casually tuning in for their daily dose of celebrity news. And you could feel the shift in energy through the screen.
let's just rip the Band-Aid off. Angela Levin didn't drop a bombshell. She detonated a PR nuke. In one calculated breath,
Suddenly, people weren't half watching anymore. They were glued to their TVs, their phones, completely frozen by what they were hearing. This wasn't the usual palace gossip about who wore what or who said what at a family dinner. Levin was touching on something fundamental. Questions about whether Harry and Meghan followed the rules, about royal standing, about centuries-old traditions that apparently got skipped entirely. She was bringing up the kind of stuff that makes the palace PR team break into a cold sweat. Her tone, absolutely calm, almost.
Do you think you've been very harsh, one woman to another? I mean, you've just used the phrase, she is not fit to be
Casual, like she was just having a regular conversation over tea, but every single word carried weight. She wasn't yelling, wasn't being dramatic, wasn't trying to sensationalize anything. She was just laying out observations, asking questions that apparently nobody else had the guts to ask on live television, and somehow that made it even more powerful. When you're calm and collected while dropping bombs, people listen even harder. And the internet, it exploded instantly. Within minutes, Twitter was going absolutely wild. People were screen recording clips, sharing them everywhere, breaking down every sentence she said.
What you're about to see is a prime example of someone who is a narcissist, and this time, she's seething with anger. Now,
TikTok users were stitching the footage with their shocked reactions. Instagram stories were filled with reposts of the moment. Comment sections filled up so fast you couldn't keep up. Everyone was asking the same thing. Did she really just say that on air? Did we all just witness what we think we witnessed? The hosts sitting next to her looked uncomfortable, shifting in their seats, clearly not expecting the conversation to go there. But Levin, she kept going, unfazed, like she knew exactly what she was doing and wasn't about to back down. So, what exactly was Levin talking about?
I think she's brought out the worst in him, and I think it's appalling that his behavior has been so bad.
Here's the thing. She started pointing out something that most people had never really thought about before. When royal babies are born, there's a whole process that's supposed to happen. It's not just about announcing, hey, we had a baby. There's way more to it than that. For literally centuries, royal births have followed this specific playbook. Hospital announcements, official statements from doctors, photos on the hospital steps with the newborn, medical details confirming everything went smoothly. It's all very formal, very public, very recorded. And it's not just for show either. These traditions exist because royal babies are in line for the throne.
Overall, she remains one of the sloppiest and laziest content creators.
People expect to know everything's real and above board, that everything follows the rules that have been in place forever. But with Archie and Lilibet, something was completely different. Levin started listing what was missing, and honestly, once you hear it, you can't unhear it. No hospital step photos. You know those iconic shots of royal parents holding their newborn for the cameras? Nowhere to be found. Official medical statements from doctors didn't happen. The usual announcements with all the standard details skipped entirely. Get this, normally when a royal baby is born, there's this whole public process.
Did Meghan Markle change her name on baby Archie's birth certificate?
Breaking today. The corrupt
The hospital, the time, the wait, the doctors involved, all of it gets shared because, again, these kids are in the line of succession. People expect to know these things. It's been that way for generations. But Harry and Meghan did things their own way. Everything was kept private. Everything was kept quiet. Everything was kept behind closed doors. And people started noticing other things too. Timelines that didn't quite match up with public appearances. Details that seemed to shift depending on who was telling the story. Photos that raised eyebrows for various reasons.
Hello there, neighbor. Oh my goodness, you need to get in here right now. I don't even know where to begin. I am so...
Little things that individually might not mean much, but when you put them all together, it started painting a picture that didn't look like any other royal birth in modern history. Now here's where it gets interesting. Royal watchers, the people who follow this stuff religiously, started comparing Archie and Lilibet's births to every other recent royal baby. William and Kate's kids, full hospital coverage, doctors, statements, the whole 9 yards. Every other royal birth in recent memory, same thing. Public, recorded, following tradition to the letter. But the Sussex kids, total departure from everything.
Genuinely respected global figures who have dedicated their lives to public service. Meghan Markle is a former...
And Levin wasn't afraid to say it out loud. She pointed out that this was the first time in the history of the modern monarchy that royal births had been handled this way. First time the standard process got completely bypassed. First time everything was this secretive. And the kicker? The only person who was actually there for Archie's birth, according to what's been shared publicly, was Harry himself. That's it. Compare that to other royal births where you've got medical staff, palace officials, all kinds of people involved in confirming details. With Archie, just Harry's word on how everything went down.
Meghan is trying to frame their new first look deal as some kind of exciting, flexible new chapter. She says it's an...
People weren't just curious anymore, they were genuinely confused. Why would Harry and Meghan break from centuries of tradition? What was the reason for keeping everything so private when every other royal had followed the standard process? These weren't small changes. These were massive departures from how things have always been done. Listen, Levin didn't just throw out vague complaints. She got specific, and the more specific she got, the more uncomfortable it became. She started breaking down exactly what wasn't there. And we're not talking about minor details here, we're talking about...
So you tell me to tell you something that maybe a dozen people actually know.
The fundamental stuff that's supposed to happen with every single royal birth. The kind of information that's been shared publicly for literally generations. First off, the birth announcements. Normally, there's this whole official process. The palace puts out statements with all the key information. Where the baby was born, when, what time, how much they weighed, all of it. It's standard procedure. It's been the same for decades. But with Archie, the announcement came way later than usual, and it was missing a bunch of the normal details. People were scratching their heads going, wait, why are they?
The royal world is in shock as Angela Levin, the famed royal biographer, drops a bomb
doing this differently. And the timing of everything just felt off. You know how usually the palace announces when a royal goes into labor, like the Duchess has been admitted to the hospital and everyone waits for updates? That didn't happen. Instead, Harry and Meghan announced the birth after the baby was already here. They told everyone when they were ready on their own schedule, which, okay, fair enough, it's their family. But it broke from decades of how things are done. Here's where it gets even stranger. The location kept changing in people's stories.
And now on to the Sussexes proper and Meghan's podcast. We now have weekly...
Was it a hospital? Was it at home? Was it at Frogmore Cottage? Different stories came out, and nobody from the Sussex camp was clarifying anything. Usually, with royal births, everyone knows exactly where it happened because it's announced officially. This time, total mystery. Get this, normally it takes specific time to get from Portland Hospital to Frogmore Cottage. But the timeline that Harry mentioned in his book didn't quite line up with the travel time. People started doing the math and going, hold on, this doesn't add up.
Why had Buckingham Palace, which confirmed every detail of William and Kate's births, refused to clarify?
It's like when someone tells you a story and the times don't match. You start wondering what's missing. And then there were the photos. Some photos from Meghan's pregnancy raised questions because people noticed things looked a bit unusual. Not saying anything definite, just that royal watchers who've followed this stuff for years were going, that's different. And when photos did come out of Archie, they were very controlled, very limited, very different from the traditional royal baby photo shoots everyone's used to seeing. The silence from Frogmore Cottage wasn't helping either.
Let's just rip the bandage off. Angela Levin didn't just drop a story, she detonated a full-blown PR bomb.
Usually when there are questions about royal births, the palace steps in and clears things up. They'll put out statements, provide clarification, make sure everyone has the facts straight. But this time, radio silence. No follow-up details, no additional answers, nothing to fill in the gaps people were noticing. So, what did people do? They started digging into everything on social media. Royal watchers began comparing timelines, looking at old photos, going through public statements Harry and Meghan had made at different times. They were putting together these massive threads on Twitter, breaking down every little detail.
Buckingham Palace has declined to comment on these claims so far, but this, of course, is the answer to the question that everyone has been asking since...
Trying to figure out what actually happened and when. And the theories? Oh man, they were everywhere. Some people had reasonable explanations. Maybe Harry and Meghan just wanted privacy. Maybe they were trying to protect their kids from media attention. Fair enough. But others came up with wilder ideas. More complex theories about why everything was so secretive. Forums were filled with debates. Comment sections turned into full-blown discussions. People were genuinely invested in figuring out what was going on. But here's the thing that tied it all together.
And laziest content creators out there. I can't call it creative, as there's not much creative about her from what we've seen.
Whether the theories were reasonable or completely out there, they all came from the same place. People noticed there were gaps in the story. Things that didn't quite connect, details that were missing, information that should have been public but wasn't. And once you start noticing those gaps, it's really hard to stop thinking about them. The more Levin pointed out what was absent, the more people went back and looked at everything with fresh eyes. And what they saw didn't match up with any other royal birth they'd ever witnessed. So how did Harry react to all this? Not well at all.
The wild part. Buckingham Palace didn't just leak a rumor or issue a vague statement. They dropped what's being called...
Within hours of Levin's broadcast going live, words started getting out that Harry was absolutely losing it. And I'm not talking about being a little annoyed or frustrated. People in his circle were saying he was completely spiraling. Frantic phone calls, pacing around, just totally overwhelmed by how fast this was spreading. Now here's what made it worse. Instead of just coming out and addressing the questions directly, giving people some straight answers, Harry went into full damage control mode. Stories started coming out about chaos behind closed doors.
Polar thing that's going to be photographed and filmed for Netflix. This is Harry's one.
Phones ringing nonstop, emergency meetings happening, people scrambling to figure out how to handle the situation. It was like watching someone try to put out a fire with gasoline. And you know what happens when someone reacts that intensely to questions? People start wondering why. If there's really nothing to hide, why the massive reaction? Why not just calmly explain things and move on? But Harry's response wasn't calm, not even close. The thing is, Harry used to be known for keeping his cool under pressure.
The baloo over Photogate, which involved a very badly edited photo by Princess Catherine. Poor woman. The press went to town.
The guy had dealt with media scrutiny his entire life. He'd handled way worse situations with grace and composure. But this was different. People who'd followed him for years were shocked at how rattled he seemed. This wasn't the collected prince they were used to seeing. This was someone who looked cornered, defensive, almost desperate. And of course, the internet had an absolute field day with it. Within hours, literally hours, memes started popping up everywhere. Harry's face photoshopped onto all kinds of situations, captions about him freaking out, jokes about his reaction being way over the top.
What's very interesting and shows a lot about him is the way he's arrived here.
TikTok was flooded with people doing dramatic reenactments. Twitter couldn't stop roasting him. Even people who usually defended Harry were going, okay, this reaction is a bit much. His visible frustration became its own storyline. News outlets weren't just covering what Levin said anymore. Now they were covering Harry's response to what Levin said. And his response was making way bigger headlines than the original broadcast did. It's like he took a small fire and dumped jet fuel all over it. People around him were apparently saying that Harry was beyond reason at this point.
About Meghan Markle, do you think there's any... People are talking quite... I mean, I saw something on one of the programmes in the UK. Right.
One person described him as frantic and not listening to anyone. Another said he was making calls himself, trying to control the narrative, but just making everything more chaotic. The people around him were supposedly struggling to calm him down, to get him to take a step back and think strategically. But Harry wasn't having it. And here's the brutal truth. Every single move he made to try and shut this down just made people more convinced there was something he didn't want them to know. It's basic human psychology, right? When someone gets super defensive about questions...
They're both doing separate things. And it said that Meghan's in a hotel, Harry's in a hotel, so what they're doing with their 60...
You start thinking maybe those questions hit too close to home. The contrast was stark. On one side, you had Angela Levin, calm as anything, just sitting there making observations. On the other side, you had Harry, reportedly melting down behind the scenes, his frustration spilling out into public view. The optics couldn't have been worse for him. Social media commentary was ruthless. People were saying things like, if he's got nothing to hide, why is he acting like this? Others joked that he was proving Levin's point better than she ever could.
It was discovered that Meghan, even before Lilibet was born, had taken out the names.
Even royal supporters who wanted to defend him were finding it hard because his reaction just looked so over the top. The prince, who'd once inspired sympathy, who people had rooted for after everything he'd been through, was suddenly becoming a punchline. Late-night shows in America started making jokes. British tabloids were having the time of their lives. Commentary channels on YouTube were dissecting every reported detail of his reaction. What could have been handled with a simple clarification, maybe a calm statement addressing the questions.
Harry, he's back for a short while.
It's been awful.
Yeah.
I think he's been rude to his father.
Had turned into a full-blown spectacle. And Harry was right in the middle of it, looking more and more like someone who'd lost control of the situation entirely. Now, while Harry was publicly spiraling, something else was happening. Or more accurately, something wasn't happening. Meghan had completely disappeared. And I don't mean she went on vacation or took a break from social media for a few days. I mean, she went full ghost mode. No statements, no appearances, no Instagram posts, absolutely nothing. For someone who's usually very involved in how they present themselves to the world,
Whether you really know, whether you actually have experience, whether they're facts, whether it's conjecture, you know, you say what you think, but what are the...
This silence was deafening. Here's the thing about Harry and Meghan. They've always operated as a team, united front, coordinated messaging, both of them on the same page about everything they put out publicly. That's been their whole brand. But suddenly, that dynamic looked completely broken. While Harry was reportedly pacing around, making frantic calls and losing his mind over Levin's broadcast, Meghan was nowhere to be seen. People who work around them were apparently noticing the shift. Harry was visible, stressed, clearly struggling.
9 stars who can't stand Meghan Markle. 1. Candace Owens. The conservative commentator has repeatedly...
Meghan, completely invisible. And that wasn't by accident. The internet picked up on it immediately. Where's Meghan started trending across Twitter. People were genuinely asking, where is she during all this? Why isn't she saying anything? Why isn't she backing up Harry or addressing any of this? The silence was so noticeable. It became its own story. And the memes? Oh, they were brutal. People were posting pictures of Harry looking stressed with captions like, when your partner leaves you to handle the drama alone. Others showed side-by-side comparisons. Harry in...
Very interestingly, on the royal website, they removed the information that in 2016...
full meltdown mode versus Meghan just gone, disappeared, MIA. Now, opinions split pretty hard on what this meant. Some people thought it was actually brilliant strategy on Meghan's part. Stay out of the spotlight, let the storm blow over, don't add fuel to the fire by getting involved. Keep yourself clean while everything else gets messy. It's not the worst play if you're trying to protect your own image. But others saw it differently. They saw a partner leaving Harry to face the music alone, letting him take all the heat, absorb all the criticism, deal with all the...
Is there anything Harry can do to build bridges?
Well, actually, I'll be honest with this, and that is to ditch...
fallout while she stayed safely in the background. And honestly, that doesn't look great either. The contrast couldn't have been more obvious. One half of the couple was visibly falling apart, making headlines for all the wrong reasons, becoming a meme across every social platform. The other half had vanished completely, strategically absent from the entire mess. The united partnership they'd always presented, it looked shaky at best, completely fractured at worst. People who'd followed them for years were confused. This wasn't how they usually operated. Normally, when one of them faced criticism...
What can the royal family do about it, though? Obviously, it almost feels like they pick a time when the family are powerless and then they...
The other was right there defending them, backing them up, presenting that solid front. But this time, Harry was out there alone, flailing, while Meghan was doing what exactly? Nobody knew. Royal commentators started weighing in on the absence. Some called it calculated, others called it cold, but everyone agreed it was noticeable. You can't go from being half of a very public power couple to completely invisible without people talking about it. And the longer the silence went on, the more theories popped up. Was she distancing herself from the controversy? Was she waiting for it to blow over before saying anything?
What do you make of this potential move to rebrand themselves to be closer to Diana? Some suggest maybe even try and take her.
Was there disagreement behind closed doors about how to handle this? People were speculating like crazy, filling in the blanks with their own interpretations. People working with them were apparently noticing tension they hadn't seen before. The usual coordination wasn't there. The usual teamwork seemed absent. It was like watching a partnership that had always functioned smoothly suddenly hit a massive bump. What made it even more striking was remembering how they used to be. Every appearance coordinated, every statement aligned.
Prince Harry was recently seen with his 2-year-old daughter, Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor. Many critics...
Both of them clearly on the same page about their message and their image. They'd built their brand on being this united force, but now that image was cracking and everyone could see it. Meghan's disappearing act wasn't subtle, it was theatrical. And in the middle of all the chaos Angela Levin had created, it only made Harry's public meltdown look even more dramatic. He was out there alone, visibly struggling, while his partner had gone completely silent. And whether that was strategic brilliance or something else entirely,
that someone says yes, and someone loves him for himself because she didn't know very much about the royal family.
It definitely wasn't a good look for either of them. Meanwhile, Angela Levin, She was playing this whole thing like a masterclass in media strategy. Here's what made her approach so effective. She wasn't screaming accusations or being dramatic. She was just calmly pointing things out, asking questions, and letting people come to their own conclusions. And somehow that made everything she said hit even harder. Think about it. When someone's yelling and making big dramatic statements, it's easy to dismiss them.
Yes.
Do you think that they look happy together? I mean,
they never look happy together, actually, more than a minute. I mean, on this...
But when someone's sitting there totally composed, just methodically raising reasonable questions, that's way more powerful. You can't easily write that off. Like, Levin's whole vibe was, I'm just observing what everyone can see. She wasn't claiming to have secret inside information. She was basically saying, look at what's publicly available. Look at what's missing. Draw your own conclusions. And that approach made her almost impossible to attack. People who follow media stuff started noticing her technique pretty quickly. She'd present a timeline, point out where things didn't line up, and then just...
Meghan Markle, with her clever words, may have tricked my son Harry from the very start. In a private...
Leave it there. No huge dramatic statements, just... Here's what we know, here's what we don't know, make of that what you will. It put all the power in the audience's hands. And she didn't just say her piece once and disappear. Nope. She came back on subsequent broadcasts, still calm, still collected, and repeated her observations, maybe adding a little more detail each time. But her tone never changed. Always measured, always reasonable, always just asking questions. Now here's where Harry made a huge mistake.
Another bombshell in British media. The controversial decision by Buckingham Palace has angered the entire United Kingdom.
Every time he tried to shut down the conversation, every frustrated move he made, it just gave Levin more material. She didn't even have to do anything. His reaction was doing all the work for her. What could have been a story that lasted a news cycle or two turned into this ongoing saga? Why? Because Harry kept feeding it. Every defensive response, every visible sign of frustration. It all just made people more curious about what Levin was saying. The contrast became the story itself. Levin returning to TV looking completely unbothered.
Just can't quite see his face.
Then just 3 days on.
Notice how when they are...
Never getting rattled. And then reports of Harry losing his mind behind the scenes, looking defensive and cornered. The optics couldn't have been worse. Social media ate it up. Side-by-side comparisons everywhere. Levin sitting there composed. Harry reportedly frantic. The memes wrote themselves. When you stay calm versus when you panic type stuff, brutal. And Levin's credibility just kept growing. The calmer she stayed while everything exploded, the more trustworthy she looked. Meanwhile, Harry's credibility was taking hit after hit.
I think she can't see herself. And also she pushes Harry out the way, or she pulls him if she wants to...
When you're freaking out while someone else stays cool, people naturally start thinking the calm person is telling the truth. Every broadcast Levin did got millions of views. Clips would go viral within hours. People were tuning in to see if she'd say more, if Harry would react again. She'd created this cycle where attention just kept building instead of fading. And she never had to raise her voice, never had to make wild claims. She just calmly presented what was already out there in public. She let the gaps in the story speak for themselves. She let Harry's reactions speak.
One of the people who knocks us on the head now and then is Harry. He got the green light to appeal.
For itself. She just had to show up and ask questions. People were calling it textbook communication strategy. How to raise uncomfortable topics without crossing lines, how to maintain credibility, how to keep a story alive through sheer composure. Meanwhile, Harry was doing the exact opposite of everything you're supposed to do in a PR crisis. Getting defensive, looking rattled, making the story bigger through his reactions. It was like watching someone dig their own hole deeper with every move. By the time a few weeks had passed, Levin had essentially won the public perception battle without even trying that hard.
It was either a publicity stunt or they wanted to be absolutely as nasty as possible.
Right.
She looked credible, composed, and reasonable. Harry looked defensive, frantic, and like he had something to hide. And all she'd done was stay calm and keep asking the same questions everyone else was starting to ask too. By the next morning, this whole thing had gone completely global. And I'm not talking about a few articles here and there. I'm talking full-blown international media circus. American morning shows were dedicating entire segments to breaking down what happened. Hosts were playing clips of Levin's broadcast on repeat, analyzing every word she said and every reported detail of Harry's reaction.
She says, I think the marriage is very near finished and it will be, she will sort of walk away. Sorry, Angela.
It wasn't just entertainment news anymore. This was front page stuff. Over in the UK, the tabloids were having an absolute field day. Headlines screaming from every newsstand, each one more sensational than the last. Every embarrassing detail, every meme, every bit of gossip, it was all getting printed and spread everywhere. The prince who used to command respect was suddenly becoming the butt of jokes worldwide. It's a brutal shift. One day you're a respected royal, the next you're a punchline on every continent.
Love with Love Meghan right now.
What is that?
The Meghan.
What is that?
The Meghan Markle / Meghan Dutch.
Late night shows in America jumped all over it. Comedians were writing entire monologues about the situation. They'd show clips of Levin staying calm, then cut to reports of Harry's meltdown, and just let the contrast do the comedy. The audience ate it up every single time. Social media turned it into this massive viral phenomenon. Reaction videos, commentary threads, dramatic readings of the timeline, TikTokers reenacting the whole saga. The content just kept multiplying. Clips from Levin's original broadcast were getting shared millions of times.
Meghan would be absolutely furious, but it won't be her fault. Neither of them want to admit that it's their fault. It will be someone.
Paired with people's shocked reactions. Those reaction videos would get millions of views themselves. It became this self-perpetuating content machine. Even people who normally don't care about royal drama were getting pulled in. Your average person who couldn't tell you the difference between a duke and an earl was suddenly following every development. It had crossed over into mainstream entertainment. Former supporters were starting to turn. Comment sections filled with people saying, I used to defend him, but this reaction is just too much. Others asked why he couldn't just address the questions directly.
That's true. I appreciate that. Yes. I used to teach gift wrapping at paper stores.
Instead of making everything worse. The tide of public opinion was shifting fast. Every move Harry made became fresh content for the internet to tear apart. A reported phone call, memes, an emergency meeting, more jokes. He couldn't catch a break because everything he did just fed the beast. The contrast between Levin and Harry got replayed endlessly. Side-by-side videos showing her calm demeanor versus his reported chaos. It was playing on loop across the internet, and each time it made Harry look worse. British commentary shows couldn't stop talking about it.
Meghan literally made cookies for all of you guys. Each one of you are going to get
Panel discussions going on for hours, breaking down every angle, speculating about what would happen next. The story had legs, and it just kept running. American audiences who'd never cared much about the royals were suddenly invested. It had everything people love: drama, mystery, someone powerful looking vulnerable, questions without answers, and endless memes. Irresistible. The global mockery was everywhere, loud and relentless. Harry had become the main character of the internet, and not in a good way. Every news cycle brought fresh coverage, fresh jokes, fresh analysis.
I genuinely do not understand this at all whatsoever. Do you understand this?
The story refused to die. What started as one broadcast had exploded into this worldwide phenomenon nobody could escape. Turn on the TV, there it was. Open social media, flooded with it. Even mainstream news outlets that usually avoid gossip were covering it because it had gotten that big. Harry wasn't just dealing with a PR problem anymore. He was dealing with becoming a global spectacle watched and mocked by millions, with no clear way to make it stop. Then Levin dropped something that made everything way more serious.
Somebody lied to her several times and told her that she was fly, hot, and sexy and beautiful, and
She wasn't just talking about Harry and Meghan anymore, she was talking about their kids. During one broadcast, she mentioned that all these questions, the missing details, the broken traditions, could potentially have implications for Archie and Lilibet's standing in the royal family. Now, we're not talking about gossip anymore, we're talking about the kids' place in the line of succession. That's huge. The royal succession is built on tradition and public records being crystal clear. These children are technically in line to the throne. Historically, that means certain things need to be public knowledge.
But as the internet does best, people quickly began analyzing, scrutinizing, and questioning every detail.
When that information is missing, it raises questions about their standing with, and this is where things apparently got really intense. Word got out about Meghan's reaction. According to people who heard about it, she absolutely lost it. Full meltdown. Throwing her phone, screaming that Levin had crossed a line. Friends were shocked at the intensity. This wasn't about image anymore. This was about her children, and that hit completely different. But here's their impossible position. Any response risked making it bigger. Staying silent made questions loom larger.
To controversy, but this time she didn't just stir the pot, she flipped the whole thing upside down. In a calculated move.
Addressing it meant opening the exact conversations they'd been avoiding. No good options. The public started connecting dots. If traditional processes weren't followed, what does that mean for these kids down the line? It's about how the royal system works. Social media went into overdrive. People weren't just memeing, they were having serious discussions about royal protocol and succession. The conversation had elevated to something with real consequences. For Harry and Meghan, the stakes had completely changed. What started as uncomfortable questions had turned into concerns about their children's future.
Difficult time, but neither of them had as difficult a time as she had because of the racism.
That's not something you can PR your way out of. Every option looked bad. Address it, risk scrutiny, ignore it, let questions grow, try to shut it down, look defensive. No clean exit. And Levin knew exactly what she'd done. By bringing the children's titles into it, she'd raised the stakes to a level where they couldn't just wait for it to blow over. The royal structure is built on clear succession lines and public records. When those get fuzzy, it creates problems without easy solutions. And Harry and Meghan were stuck in the middle with no way out.
She likes it to be all about her. She wants to be out there in front. I don't mean she's not fit because she's not clever enough.
And that's where things stand right now. Angela Levin's most recent broadcast ended with 4 simple words. This is just the beginning. Let that sink in. She's not done. There's more coming, more questions, more missing pieces. And she's making it clear this isn't over. For Harry and Meghan, that's terrifying. They've been stuck in this spotlight for weeks, every move scrutinized, every reaction analyzed, every attempt to control the narrative backfiring. And now there's more to come. Nightmare scenario. The questions that started all this, still unanswered. Why were traditional protocols skipped?
Clearly see the military officer here, using a hand gesture to tell Harry exactly where he should be sitting, not Meghan Markle, though.
Where are the usual public records? Why did timelines seem off? Why was everything so secretive when every other royal birth was public? Nobody's gotten straight answers. Harry's still trapped. Every time he tries to move forward, the questions follow. Every attempt to shut it down just makes people more curious. He can't escape it. The cameras are still rolling, social media is still buzzing, the world's still watching, still speculating, still trying to figure out what actually happened and why so much was kept behind closed doors. Here's what makes this captivating. We still...
His arm, so he can't move more than a few inches. So, perhaps he'll work on that one. But he
don't have the full story. We've got gaps, inconsistencies, questions that lead to more questions. It's like a puzzle with missing pieces. So, what do you think? Are Harry and Meghan just protecting their privacy, or is there something deeper? Do the missing details matter? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you want to stay in the loop on what happens next, hit that subscribe button. Smash the like if this saga has you hooked. Turn on notifications, because when Levin drops whatever she's got next, You'll want to know immediately, because the storm isn't dying down. If anything, it's just getting started. And Harry and Meghan are right in the middle with no way out. The mystery's still unsolved, the questions are still hanging, and the whole world's watching to see what comes next.